Hello, dear friends. We are sincerely glad to welcome you again. Today we will have a conversation with the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings.
Igor Mikhailovich, due to climate change, nowadays millions of people are losing calmness in the truest sense of the word, because there are reasons for that. We all live in a new reality, which is already very difficult to ignore. And of course, this reality greatly affects people's daily lives and their psycho-emotional state. A lot of people in the world know that they face such a phenomenon as climate anxiety and even climate depression. Researchers carried out a number of surveys, and they state that the overwhelming majority of people, including young people, say that they experience enormous fear of the future. Many people say that they have no future at all, and they feel doomed, that's firstly. And secondly, they also feel sort of betrayed and abandoned by the government because it doesn't react in any way and doesn't take any steps. All these factors indeed force people to reconsider what is now happening to them and to review their vision of the future. A lot of people give up long term goals and life prospects, up to the point that they even refuse an intention to have children.
On the one hand, this is certainly sad that people refuse to procreate, but on the other hand, their motivation may be understood. If a person is really knowledgeable, if he observes what is happening with the climate, naturally anxiety arises in him. I can understand such people. On the one hand, this is sad, but on the other hand, frankly speaking, it is joyful that there are many responsible people, moreover intelligent people, who are capable of analyzing cause and effect relationships and who observe what is happening with the climate across the world. They see the real situation despite the fact that the mass media are smoothing out the true threats of climate change. Many of the current natural disasters are simply hushed up. If just recently even minor earthquakes or some floods were described and talked about a lot, mass media always spoke about such events. Now they have started hushing up even serious climate manifestations for some reason. It is clear why. Hence, when people really observe what is happening with the climate and see that information is artificially hushed up and restricted, and even those who have already suffered from these cataclysms do not receive timely help, distrust actually arises in people towards the authorities as well. But this is a natural manifestation. Why? Because if we put ourselves in the shoes of leaders, everything becomes clear. I mean, timely help when, God forbid, we also get into trouble. Yes, we would like to receive this timely help, but from the perspective of the authorities, it takes them time to figure things out, to obtain information and to react, yet there are no scenarios, prepared scenarios. Meanwhile, there are a lot of various manifestations nowadays. Let's say in that very climate, there are floods, then winds, then earthquakes. One event follows another. People are unprepared for that. There are no prepared scenarios and there are no responsible people. So this kind of adaptation is difficult and untimely. Again, in one of our videos, we discussed Hawaii and said that there was a military base not far away. The military could have come, they could have, if it had been thought out in advance, but were they prepared for such a catastrophic scenario to happen in Hawaii? Of course they were not.
They were waiting for commands, right?
Absolutely right. Floods that are happening.
Until there is an approval, right?
Yes, floods that are happening in that very China. Yes, China is powerful and strong, but at the same time there is no help. It took them not a few minutes and not hours to figure out what was happening, but days. While people were in trouble, that's the reason why such things are happening. Why? Because we as humanity are unprepared. Indeed, it's not that we are unprepared in terms of scenarios, but we are even unprepared to acknowledge this problem psychologically. Our consciousness rejects that reality which has come today. We want to live in our habitual world. We do not want those changes which are taking place. If we understood and realized the entire catastrophic nature of climatic changes that are already underway, and especially those that will come, would anyone start geopolitical games, wars, and everything else? I think they wouldn't. I'm more than sure they wouldn't. No one would cause nations to quarrel. On the contrary, there would be work on uniting them in friendship. However, these scenarios were created a long time ago. You see, when there were no such manifestations yet, as a matter of fact, cyclical changes in the climate have manifested themselves clearly, as everyone sees, only this year, 2023. Similar events happened before, but it was somehow natural, So no one paid much attention. Yes, they saw an increase. Yes, they observed. But, let's be honest, they lacked wits to realize the problem, and no one even had a desire to realize what was actually coming. Well, that's our human nature. Why even go far and blame the governments? Let's take Japan, the year 2011, okay? When there was the most terrible tsunami that took lots of lives and caused crazy losses. What was happening? After all, the authorities spent half an hour warning people that they had to save themselves, go to heights, that there would be a tsunami and so on. But what did we see? Well, whoever hasn't seen it, you can look and find plenty of real footage on the internet when people, excuse me, were standing on the seafront. When the authorities warned them, instead of leaving and escaping, they on the contrary came to the seafront and started recording videos. People were standing and filming what was happening. Why? Because they had experience when they had been previously warned of an impending tsunami. It came, but it was very weak. That's why they came to see such a spectacle which did not pose any threat. And no one reacted properly, or rather, they did react, but only a few of them, while the rest were unprepared. However, a real disaster occurred which took a lot of lives. Moreover, when such a severe cataclysm takes place, when the power of nature manifests itself, it fetters many people. They are as if mesmerized, like under hypnosis. People are simply at a loss. They fall into a stupor before this powerful force. This should also be understood. But this is wrong. When a person doesn't have an action plan in his head, he doesn't know what to do. Therefore, at the moment, at this particular time, from a purely human perspective, I would recommend you even having an emergency bag. Moreover, it should be kept in a place convenient for you wherever you are in your room, so that when you try to leave the room very fast, you wouldn't search for it, wouldn't go down to the basement and look for your emergency bag in some safe. I mean, it should be at hand, so that you don't waste time if you urgently need to leave your room, and you should be prepared for that. Again, you should be prepared for a situation like the one that recently happened in Mexico, right? Nobody actually expected that a tropical storm, a seemingly ordinary one, would turn into a Category 5 hurricane in less than 24 hours. And then what? You see how catastrophically and quickly everything is changing, and these extremely strong winds destroyed people's houses, they tore off roofs, just knocked out windows and carried sofas and furniture out of houses along with people. So it is important to be prepared even for such scenarios. Even in your own room, in your own house or apartment, it doesn't matter. You have to know where you have the safest place, and if the wind is really strong, then you need to be in a room where there are no windows, where you are at least in some kind of a safe zone. At least you can lock yourself in the bathroom or, in the hallway. That is, you should even envisage such scenarios. It can save your life. It is important. Well, again, you have to understand the responsibility for your family members and neighbors. Where you can render substantial help, you can take responsibility in the group of people who are next to you. Why? Because you have to know how to really act in one or another situation. God grant you won't need that, but today I can honestly say that there is hardly a person who won't need that if he has the prospect of living longer. It's true, it is sad, but it's true. Why? Because there is a simple question many people ask. Where should we possibly move to? Climate starts changing in our region. But where can you go, friends? Analyze what has happened this year. After all, you are educated, intelligent people. Pay attention, at least compare the years 2021, 2022 and 2023. Look at the dynamics and you will understand that soon there will simply be no favorable or safe place left on our planet. So regarding moving somewhere, well, if you have an absolutely extreme zone, of course it is better to leave it. If your zone is more or less favorable, don't push your luck, as people say, you see. You can look for a safer place, but it's not a fact that it is safe. Meanwhile, it is really necessary to understand and to know how to act. In a certain situation, indeed, let's take that very emergency back. After all, those very documents and basic necessities, if you have it all at hand, it's better than nothing. It is necessary to proceed from practice, from what people have experienced, again to listen to those who, God forbid, already got into a situation where people died, when they lost everything. Excuse me, their housing and their documents and money along with it. And you should have at least some dry rations for a couple of days, because when there's some kind of a global climatic disaster, it's hard to even find water afterwards. It's really true, but it is necessary to survive. And what if you are responsible not only for yourself, but also for children and the elderly? Yes, you've managed to save yourself, but what about food? What about water? You should have at least a little bit what you can take with you. You should have it at hand. That is at least some safety buffer, as people say. But again, you should understand that even if an earthquake happens, you should leave the room in time. Not only do you have to leave it quickly, but you also have to wait outside and not immediately enter the room. We've been through this, and not so long ago we had an earthquake with a magnitude of 5. It's nothing, it seems. It is clear that we left the building, as well as our neighbors. We went outside, everyone was alarmed, the houses were swaying. But what struck me was that a lot of people don't know what aftershocks are. They really don't know. I mean, we warned them, don't go in right away. Take your time. Relax, get some air, calm down. However, the next earthquake, for some reason, many people also believe that if there are aftershocks, they will be weaker. If a building keeps standing, it means there is nothing dangerous, right? So the next aftershocks will be weaker and everything will be better. But sometimes it happens that recurring earthquakes, which can happen in 1 minute, half an hour or an hour, can be much stronger than the previous one. And again, even with a magnitude of 5, yes, a building may keep standing, but what has changed in it? What cracks have appeared? And will it stand after the next earthquake, say, with a magnitude of 3? But you enter it. Everything should be taken into account. Well, let's say, you should consider in advance how to behave and what to do. If you have to go somewhere after leaving your own room, you should at least know where to go. You should know and have an understanding of where to go in one case or another. If one direction is blocked, how can you get out the other way? Out of the danger zone. In that very Hawaii, people died. Because of what? Because they couldn't leave. Yes, there was a situation, power lines were down, roads were blocked, but those who wanted found detours and saved themselves. While others just turned around and went home after hearing the police say, "Wires are down there, you shouldn't go, roads are blocked." And people went home because they were told, now the fire will be extinguished. So what? Was it extinguished? You have to understand that saving your life is your personal responsibility. When you understand that, when you care at least a little bit about what is happening to the climate, I think you will act accordingly, and at least you will have some scenarios already. Some people are afraid to think, why should I think? I would thus get myself into trouble. You know, the climate Cerberus is already here, so it doesn't matter if you think about it or not, but one day it will come. And the only question is when and in what form. And if we are not ready for it, then excuse me, our chances of a favorable outcome decrease dramatically. So it is actually better to be prepared in advance. You know, the one who is forewarned is forearmed.
You rightly said, Igor Mikhailovich, that there should be those response scenarios. Interestingly, in extreme situations, when people are disoriented, they look around. How do others behave? And we have to understand that just as we look at other people, they look at us in the same way. So it is very important to be responsible and to have these response scenarios in your head that will save people's lives. Because a lot of people have a frivolous attitude. They have sort of frivolous heroism to the situations that happen.
I would say that they behave stupidly in emergency situations. There is bravado, heroism. They start laughing. Come on, are you afraid? I'll tell you this, when there is a serious manifestation of a climatic or warfare event, it doesn't matter. When there is a real threat, the normal reaction of a healthy person is fear. Fear gives the body adrenaline. It is the ability to move quickly. It makes a person more resilient and fast. And if a person has no fear, he is a sick person. Whereas if a person tries to suppress his own fear by making fun of someone, he is a stupid person. And unfortunately, some people react to someone else's bravado, which is a defense mechanism, which means that the person himself is scared, but he starts making fun of someone so that people won't laugh at him. And sometimes it paralyzes those people who acted correctly, but when they hear such a hero in quotes, people stop, calm down and say, well, he's actually confident, in fact, an earthquake has passed, why should I be afraid? They enter a room, or are near a room, at a time when the room is simply collapsing. After all, how many real facts have there been this year? When an earthquake has passed and a building is just standing, it is intact, and then it collapses without any aftershocks. Why? Because there was critical destruction within the structure of the building itself. It was holding on, just holding on. But the slightest vibration, someone walking up the stairs, is enough for the building to fall and people die. Thus, such bravado and stupidity of irresponsible individuals sometimes cost normal people their lives. Do not listen to those who speak nonsense. When you must act, you must act. I'll repeat this once again, friends. It is normal to be afraid. It is abnormal not to be afraid. If a person, excuse me, is not afraid, does not experience fear, then, you know, I simply wonder how he managed to live to a more or less adult age. Why? Wasn't he hit by a car or something else didn't happen to him? Or why wasn't he electrocuted? How could he have stayed safe until now? Fear is normal. Fear is a natural reaction of our body to a threat to our life and our safety. That is why we should learn to behave correctly, to use these backup forces which are actually given to us by fear, precisely by fear. However, sometimes fear restrains and immobilizes a person. This is bad. You should not allow this to happen. You should act in order not to be immobilized by fear. You simply need to act. You need to develop a scenario in your head. It won't hurt to do that. In the event of a tornado, a flood, an earthquake, or again, an eruption of those very volcanoes, a lot of people will say, why volcanoes? We don't have any nearby. Maybe not nearby. But today in Italy, many locals are already extremely worried because, excuse me, a huge number of earthquakes occur in the so-called Phlegraean fields. What does that indicate? In fact, it takes just one eruption for a supervolcano to activate, and this would affect all of humanity. Even if you're far away from Italy, that's unlikely to ensure your safety, because it better not happen, let's say. That's what the residents living not far away from this volcano are hoping for as well. Why? Because where would they run to under such a scenario? However, that doesn't mean the world will immediately cease to exist. No, we'll still have to suffer for a long time. Yet, if we are ready, if we know what to do and how to act correctly, we can avoid suffering. We can act correctly even in such emergency cases of global scale. We should be prepared for everything, both for the good things. If, thank God, good things come, you can also prepare for them. But you must necessarily pay attention to bad scenarios as well. You must know what to do and how to act correctly, and where to evacuate to. Again, I will repeat, an emergency bag is actually an important thing, because without documents, without money, without food, without water, when you are left on the street, in the hardest conditions, when there is a large-scale disaster, just think, will it be easy for you or not? Many people will say, it's possible to find what you need, it's possible. Yet if there is a volcanic eruption, what will you find? Again, we come back to that statement. There are no volcanoes near us. We are now in an area which local residents don't know very well, while in fact, in this area, there are two active seismic zones, because there are two faults and there are two volcanoes nearby. Yes, they haven't erupted for a long time, but everything changes. I'll just give you a simple example of Siberia, okay? The stronghold of civilization, as they used to say just recently. In fact, millions of years ago, it caused the extinction of a huge number of living beings on our planet. That's Siberia. But then somehow everything was forgotten, smoothed out, and it was such a solid, strong and serious tectonic plate. However, the old magmatic rivers that dried up long ago under Siberia are coming to life. They become filled with magma again, but with a hotter one, coming from the very depths. That is why Siberia is warming up. It is catastrophically heating up. After all, the temperature is not decreasing, but only increasing. The permafrost is melting and a lot of problems are happening. And do you know what the biggest problem is? Under Siberia, in that plate, there is a huge amount of water, which is gradually starting to boil today. Imagine what's going to happen next. You are smart people. You have imagination and understanding. I think you can imagine it yourselves. And that territory, which just recently was a stronghold for the entire humanity, such a new ark. What do you think it really is today? An ark? Or the exact opposite? Draw your own conclusions. Everything is warming up. Currently, it is unclear what will happen, when, and which one will precede the others. Siberia, Italy, America, or Japan. There are a lot of dangerous spots, and anything may happen at any of them. So you have to be responsible and to understand cause and effect relationships. Again, why? Because in actual fact, nowadays all the increasing heat is coming from the interior of the planet, from our planet, which indicates that there is a huge amount of energy that is accumulating more and more. What does this lead to? It leads to the fact that our planet's crust is expanding. In other words, our globe is gradually expanding. This is also the reason why our planet is making an inhale. As they say, it is breathing. So it is literally making an inhale in our understanding. In other words, the expansion of our planet is taking place. It is slow, almost imperceptible, if you look at it from the outside. But in reality, it's a very rapid process. Rivers are vanishing, lakes are vanishing, water is disappearing. For this very reason. This speaks volumes, it's a clear indicator, and we already see that many rivers that have existed for millennia are now getting shallow. They are disappearing. The water is catastrophically vanishing, plus there's heating of the soil, while beneath certain regions, there's heating of the plate itself. Moreover, it is really pronounced. Plus the ocean and everything else, what will this lead to? You're smart people, so think about cause and effect relationships. I'm not going to voice this scenario, think for yourselves. That is why there are a lot of earthquakes. Install an application on your phone which shows the daily number and magnitudes of earthquakes, and you will see what is going on. After all, not so long ago, a magnitude 5 quake made everyone shout, report and discuss it, whereas now there are about 10 quakes a day of magnitude 5 and higher. In other words, magnitude 5 to 6 today is a norm. I understand if people didn't study, didn't know, didn't delve into it, it's not an indicator for them. However, if you delve into this a little bit, you will understand that today it is magnitude 5 to 6, while soon it will be 7 to 8, then 8 to 9, and then where to run? And who will run? That's the whole point. But life is worth fighting for. Therefore, it is better to spend a little bit of time and pay attention, I'll repeat, to studying the paths of escape, to prepare this emergency bag, to have at least some scenario in your head of how to behave in case of one or another event. This is the key to survival. If you have nothing in your head except fear, and God forbid you get in a situation of a nightmare around you, you will find nothing inside yourself except panic, unless beforehand you place in your head the necessary knowledge about how to act in emergency situations. This is important, friends. Take care of yourselves, take care of your friends, even if they don't want to. Explain and tell them. Show the elementary picture of what is currently happening with the climate. Let them think about it. But in this way, you can help them save themselves and save their families. This is also very important because it concerns life. That's the situation, friends. I understand that even those who have experienced unpleasant weather want peace and they want to forget about what happened. Many don't want to pay attention to the climate at all, saying, there are already more problems today than necessary. Believe me, friends, the biggest problem for all humanity is climate change. Therefore, you must remember one thing: life is worth fighting for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Igor Mikhailovich.
Thank you, friends. Peace be with you and God's love.